Okay.
Okay, all good.
Okay, so, and I'm assuming I'm chairing this again, is that correct?
Oh, yes, that's right.
Okay, perfect. And Patrick has joined us. I don't see him on my little screen here. He might be on another page. Yep, there's Patrick. Hey, Patrick, how are you? Okay, so March 28th meeting, ECLAC, approval of agenda, introduction of late items. Anybody have anything new that they want to add to the agenda? Not hearing anybody. I'm just going to go to a different screen view to see if I get more people in it. There we
Dave,
go. Okay.
This is just a statement to Dave. Did you want to talk about that reservoir thing that we were talking about? Where's Dave gone? Oh,
Dave is there. I think that'll come in as part of public comments, wouldn't it?
oh, okay. Well, he may have talked to you already. Anyway, sorry.
Roger check, Glenn. Yep. Okay, so
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Glenn. Second.
Yeah.
Okay, all approved. Aye.
Yep.
Okay, good. So that's done. Adoption of meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at the September 1, 2021 meeting minutes? Any comments on? Any corrections, changes? Sounds good. Okay, can we get a motion to accept them?
I'll make a motion to accept them.
Glenn, thank you. Second.
Glenn, I'll second it again.
Glenn, thank you. All approved. Hands up. Okay. So that's good. Okay, so now we go into public comments. I know Dave had some discussion he wanted to bring up. Dave, you want to start? You might have to unmute your microphone.
Sophie, can you unmute him?
I've just asked him to unmute.
I don't know that Dave knows how to do it.
Oh, here we go. Looks like he's.
Go.
This is not Dave. This is Shale, but I think my dad is muted for sure.
He wasn't.
There we are.
There you go.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can, Dave.
Okay. Okay. The only question I had was that looking at the probability of our being tied into Cove Bay water system, which apparently is not functioning properly anyway, is that in the short run, why don't we consider sealing the dam for the next 3 or 4 years? Because I cannot see, considering the way the municipality is busy with other things, that we're liable to get this done in the next 3 or 4 years. And it seems to me if we could spend a few $1,000s sealing the dam, even if it's not a permanent thing, it would give us water for the next 3 or 4 years, or maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years. And quite frankly, I'd be quite willing to pay for the materials to seal a dam myself.
Glenn, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to make mention of the fact that I was hoping for an answer of that myself, because in the minutes from September 1st of 2021, our last meeting, we did pass a motion in which it was requested that the Eagle Cliff Water System Local Advisory Committee recommend the council direct staff to look into short-term options for the continued operation of the Eagle Cliff water system. So I'm hoping that we can get that addressed in Patrick's report today.
Yep.
I've been in touch with 5 different companies in Australia that have these polymer materials, and it looks to me like if our engineer looks at our water, and Tim has all the readings for the way the water's been dropping, he should be able to make a graph and tell us pretty well accurately where the leak actually is. And we'd only have a certain minimal amount of area where the water's leaking. We know it's not leaking out of the top few feet because it keeps draining even when the water is down. So there should be a rather narrow band where sealing is required. And these companies, they look to me like we would be able to pay, say, a couple $1,000s worth of material. And quite honestly, I'm prepared to pay for the material myself out of my own pocket if the municipality will do it.
Okay, so thank you for that, Dave. Patrick, do you want to answer that now, or do you want to wait until we get to the portion, as Glenn suggested, an update on the motion that was passed in the September 2021 meeting?
Yeah, I can respond to that now. So, I mean, we did say last September that we were going to try to implement some sort of temporary sealant, sprinkling some of this polymer on the dam surface before it filled up again. We didn't, with the amount of things going on, we didn't manage to do that before the wet weather hit. We can do that this summer. With regards to the timeline, I mean, we have applied for grant money that would enable us to do the first phase of the Eagle Cliff connection in 2023. So, I think it's, in terms of what you're saying about it could be several years. I would say that's true if we don't, if we are unsuccessful getting the grant money. If we are, then I wouldn't expect it to be that long, at least for the most critical phase of making the connection itself. We also, I'm not sure how well it would work, was the advice we've gotten. And in terms of pinpointing where the leak is, I mean, we can certainly try and use the information that has been collected and Tim's information about where we observe the water level dropping and try and narrow that down. We aren't really going to know. We don't really know where it's leaking from, other than it is. So we can try that. We've also been wary about, in terms of the dam, it's on the radar screen now of the Provincial Dam Safety Authority. So, we are legally required to do a operation, maintenance, and surveillance plan and develop a dam emergency plan, which we've done for the other municipal dams at Grafton Lake and Honeymoon Lake, which is, there's a substantial amount of work and consultant costs involved in developing that. It also leads us down the path of investing in rehabilitating the dam and reservoir, which is something, cost that we're hoping to avoid. We're hoping to put that money towards infrastructure that'll benefit the Eagle Cliff system in the long term.
Okay. Glenn, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just further to Dave's comment, because I want to respect the fact that, at our previous meeting, David Wrinch made the same comment and question, and we did discuss it in that meeting as far as the sealing of the dam. And I think Patrick's right as far as the dam itself. Obviously, there's significant issues in regards to that dam, but from my understanding, this sealing of the dam area is fairly inexpensive, even if we don't know where the leak is coming from. To do the whole reservoir isn't that expensive, and I want to push for this, because we missed the window last year to do this, because obviously the reservoir needs to be at its lowest to do this. So to make sure that it is front and center as a conversation, aside from the bigger picture of connecting to the Cove Bay system, we really do need to make sure that we have a reservoir functional for the next few years. And I think if this is a simple and easy solution to try, that I want to make sure that we're poised and ready to do it when the time comes, when August or whenever that reservoir is at its lowest. As I say, we missed the opportunity last time. This question has been posed many times. We've never actually had a plan to move it forward or eliminate it if that's the choice. So I want to make sure that we do address it in a timely fashion.
Okay, good comment. Thank you, Glenn. So Patrick, just again, for radar, perhaps we could look into that and be ready to roll for this fall on that as a possible solution, temporary as it may be?
Well, summer, yeah, end of summer.
Yeah.
That is something that we have to make sure we add into the budget as well, which
Okay.
I don't think is in the current version that Kristen circulated.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? I'm just looking for hands up. I see a lot of blank screens with names. Oh, oh, why can't I come up with your
Liam.
name? Actually, I was looking at Isabel Rudiger, and
Oh,
why
okay.
can't?
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Let's go with that first.
I think we just wanted to say that we agree with that as well strongly, that as far as repairing the dam, that's something we've always felt strongly about, that it's probably the right way to go because the dam has worked for a long time. So just to agree with you guys on that.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, and Liam, you had your hand up?
Oh, I was just saying that I just put a reminder in our calendar here for June to revisit this, to be prepared for that in the summer. So just.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Hands up. Not seeing any. Okay. Oh,
sorry, Tim. I just think what would be very important, I think, to have someone assigned to go through doing the research for how that material is supposed to be laid down, because from Dave's and my discussion, it appears that water level isn't the critical part, and I'm not sure that I'm only trying to repeat back what Dave told me. So, like I said, for everybody to understand this, I think we need to get a pamphlet, find the PDF file for those that are interested in, check it out so they can say, oh, okay, this is what we, because I don't think anybody really knows how to, has remembered exactly how it should be done. I don't know if that's an issue.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
If the municipality is going to go ahead and do this temporary seal, all these materials that I've been finding are only available basically in Australia, and there'll be a shipping time and a cost. As I say, I'm perfectly prepared to pay for the material and the shipping cost, but I think if we're going to have this in place for the summer, it'll take a couple of months maybe to get the stuff here, and I think we should order the stuff now so we have it. I mean, the municipality messed up last year. Let's make sure we have everything in place for this year, and that means get the material here.
So here's my thoughts on that, Dave. Thank you for the kind offer of wishing to pay, but I think we have sufficient capital funds available that the water system itself could cover the cost. I think when we last looked at it, I think the costs were somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000, and that included machine time to clean vegetation off the side of the berm. So I would propose, rather than having an individual ECLAC member, being out personal money, that we've got sufficient funds that we should be able to do that. Any other thoughts on that as a comment?
I agree with that.
Go ahead, Liam.
So just responding to David's comment there, I mean, I think a little more research would be required just to make sure that what is being put in the dam is going to be not compromise our drinking water operating permit. Yeah. And so you don't want to be throwing anything in there that the drinking water health official is going to say, well, no, now you have a do not consume order placed on your water system. So I don't think it's as simple as ordering something from Australia and chucking it in there. Not to be sort of cheeky about it, but we just want to make sure what we're doing is not going to create a bigger challenge for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Agreed, Liam. And just a comment, I know that in having reviewed some of the product data sheets, it states that it's drinking water safe and all of the above, but we don't know specifically that it meets a CSA standard, for example, or so. I agree that there is a need to do the research, but I think as Glenn and Dave have both reiterated, and Len as well, that we don't want that to be, put off as the next thing that happens that doesn't happen, that then September rolls by and another year goes by without an action. So if that could be looked into promptly and a plan put together to purchase product if it's reasonable and have it on site and ready to go for late summer.
I think Jim's had his hand up for a question, Tim, as well.
Oh, sorry, didn't see that one. Jim, go ahead.
We can't hear you, Jim. No.
I think you're muted, Jim.
No.
I
You're muted right now. You were unmuted, but maybe your microphone's not connected.
How about that?
There we go.
Does that work better? Okay, I apologize for that. First of all, I just wanted to thank everyone that's put an effort in on this. It's been a long road, and I've sat in on a number of these meetings. I agree with the patch. My only concern is the number of homes and the renovation of homes in this area. These homes seem to get bigger, and I'm wondering if with the expansion of homes and permits in this area, this situation is going to become untenable over the next couple of years as we wait for this system to come online.
That's a fair comment.
Well, if the dam stays relatively full, we should have lots of water.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, any other?
Well,
I see, Shale, I see a hand up there.
I was just going to say that potentially we've already missed the boat for this summer with the sealant, right? So this would be talking about the following summer, that if we were to do the patch, which would be ready for next summer, potentially this summer, should we not get ourselves another tank or two for safety?
So I can comment on that, Shale, for you. Yes, in terms of the next logical time to spread the product would be when the water drops. So yes, we've missed the opportunity to have the berm repaired. Sorry, somebody saying something?
Sorry, a side comment. I said, it's not us who's missed it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But
as far as I was just going to say, as far as tanks go, if we were looking at trying to get some safety tanks, would this not be the best time of the year to fill the tank as well? Like if we wait until midsummer to get a tank, will we be able to fill it at that point?
So, Patrick, you may want to comment on that, but I can also add quickly. We have a temporary tank located up on Highland Trail in order to provide pressure for some of the higher properties, and we have the cross link to Hood Point, which delivers water in the event that we get ourselves into a no water situation. The other thing that we have going for us, and I'm not sure everybody's aware of this, but the leak that was repaired at Highland Trail a couple of falls ago, I think will allow the reservoir to do a better job of meeting the needs. We did not have the same degree of problem last summer as we did the summer before. And last summer, you may recall, was, we had all the heat domes and the extended dry period. So I think that we may have partially solved the problem with the Highland Trail leak repairs.
Oh, well, that's fantastic.
Patrick, anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, I guess last year, the line on Highland Trail was replaced, and the year before there was a section of line along Eagle Cliff Road where leaks, significant leaks were identified. So if that has helped, for sure, and continue to monitor.
The one other question I would have, just while my hand's up, would be if this all goes through, if the Muni pushes this through, have they considered what the cost of decommissioning the dam would be? Is that part of the cost?
It's not. We don't have a detailed plan for decommissioning the reservoir. You know, it could be as simple as
if the reservoir is of concern, wouldn't that be something that you'd want to look into?
Yeah, it is, and it may be very simple. It may be just a matter of draining it and letting it revegetate naturally.
As of right now, it's full, right?
It's full. Yeah, it wouldn't be difficult to drain it, though. You would just, there's a number of ways to do that, but it hasn't been part of the detailed plans and cost estimates.
But it has been part of it's been part of the discussions, and it is something of relevance that we need to consider. Of course, if the whole issue is in regards to that berm, then yeah, it needs to be decommissioned. So that will become a cost for Eagle Cliff, I imagine.
There will be some cost to it. Yeah.
I would think that it'd probably be relatively minor. It would simply be a cut down of the spillway down to whatever the natural level is, so that Carkner Creek just basically does a flow through a little puddle there. So
that's likely what we would do.
Yeah. So, sorry, I'm assuming things there, I guess, Patrick. Thanks. Okay. Any other public comments? I'm just scanning for more hands up.
Tim, I just wanted to note that there's a couple of comments in the chat. Would you like me to read those out?
Sure.
A few of them are a little bit, so at 12:43, this is about 10 minutes ago, Terry Oswald was saying, we agree with Glenn. We'd like to see the reservoir sealed as a priority. Linda was saying the Jacobsons agree with David and Glenn. Isn't June a little too late? Terry, there's also a lot of benefit to have some redundancy in the water supply system, even if we're hooked up to Cove Bay. Kaya, I believe. Jim and I agree, we'd like to see this happen as well. Linda was saying, haven't you researched that already? I believe that was in reference to the researching the sealant type. Elizabeth was saying, I agree, we need to act soon. And Terry Oswald was saying decommissioning would require more than just draining. It would have to be done so that it can't retain water again.
Except Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, I recall seeing an aerial survey photograph, and I want to say it was dating back to like 1920 or 1930, and it shows the reservoir as being a natural collection point even then. Would we not just have to return it to that point?
Yeah, it may be that there was a smaller pond on the mountainside, and that's that's part of the detail that we would be needing to confirm. Are we cutting down the spillway and essentially creating a flow through, or is there a small pond there? It's something to be confirmed.
Okay, so fair enough. Otherwise, it sounds like all the comments are pretty much on track with what's saying, other than some questions on timing. So we have that as a move forward, I guess. Okay, so if that's the last of public comments, then we'll close that section, move to the next agenda item, which is apparently introductions and elections. So introduction of Kristen Watson. Welcome, Kristen. Good to have you aboard and back. We've done some emails back and forth, and look forward to working with you further and more.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, and next elections, and I guess what's it say? Recommend that Eagle Cliff Water System Local Advisory Committee elect blank as chair. I'm willing to stand again unless somebody wants to take the role. I would step back or have a discussion about that if we want. Glenn?
I would like to nominate Tim as chair.
All right. Seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay. And all in favor? Okay, so I have my term, and vice chair, again, Glenn, are you willing to stand in that position?
I am. Yep.
Okay.
Excellent.
And would somebody like to nominate Glenn as vice?
I'd like to nominate Glenn Cormier
Thank
for
you, Len.
position of vice chair.
Thank you, Len. Seconder.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ian. All in favor? Hands up. Perfect. Okay, so we have our marching orders on that for the next year. So next, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is Public Works Eagle Cliff Water System Update. Patrick, tag, you're it.
Okay. We've already talked about a few things relating to the water system, and we've put a lot of effort into advancing the improvements needed to ensure that there's a reliable supply of high quality water for the system for years to come through a connection to Cove Bay. We've submitted a grant application, and we don't expect to hear about that till maybe the end of this year, possibly even the beginning of next year. It's generally a phased approach where there'd be the connection main initially, and then the subsequent phases would be replacing the smaller existing main along Eagle Cliff Road and installing a new high zone reservoir. And there's other parties involved with this project. The reservoir benefits also Cove Bay, and the system. There's a number of residents who've expressed interest in connecting the municipal water that aren't currently part of any system that would be part of the service and cost sharing. So that, Tim?
Yeah, Patrick, thanks. So just maybe we'll touch on this a little later, but you referenced connecting to the Cove Bay in order to, ensure a high quality of water. I've had a number of residents come to me and express concerns regarding the fact that the Cove Bay water system is still not up and operational. It's almost a year past its supposed operation date, and there's questions and serious concerns about hooking our horse or our wagon to that horse, if you will. Do we have any form of reassurance that things are going to happen on that the system is going to be up and running, and do we have a time frame?
Well, it will be up and running. We have to get it up and running. We've had some challenges with the equipment, and we're working through those. I can't give you a specific time frame. Certainly, it would be well in advance of having a connection to Eagle Cliff. We expect to have those problems resolved.
Okay. I guess so. If I was looking for a reassurance for those that have expressed that concern, would we actually connect to Cove Bay possibly before the new Cove Bay water system is actually operational, or would we not connect until Cove Bay is absolutely in play?
No, I mean, we would have the water source and the treatment process in place before adding anything, an additional water system into the mix.
Okay, so that's an assurance on your part or on the Muni's part that we would not find ourselves connected to Cove Bay in its current iteration.
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, carry on. Sorry about that.
Okay, so the key issues with the system have been relating to supply in the summertime and the concerns about the dam. We've talked about pursuing an interim approach using some polymer product this summer. The the dam, sort of the pattern of the dam leakage, it did get worse in recent years. It seems to have been fairly stable between last summer and the summer before in terms of the pattern of leakage from the dam. That's doesn't really speak to what would happen in future. We have installed two 5,000 gallon tanks up on Highland Trail in the event that we have to take water from Hood Point in the summer in the event of a shortage. And that provides some storage capacity and some buffer for that and an ability to serve the higher properties. We haven't had to do that. I think the repairs to the leaks probably helped the situation. The fact that the dam leakage doesn't appear to have worsened. We did have a substantial amount of flow in the other direction this winter when the Hood Point supply line from Honeymoon Lake froze, and that's fairly common. So it was about a month of supply in January from Eagle Cliff to Hood Point. In terms of water quality, it's I mean, the issues are the same as they've been. There's often, if you're looking at the quality of the Eagle Cliff water relative to Canadian drinking water quality guidelines, the turbidity often exceeds the 1 NTU target guideline. The disinfection byproducts are often higher than guidelines, the trihalomethanes and HHAs. So that's not changed and won't change until either there's a connection to a higher quality of treatment or a new treatment facility is installed.
So I thought, I just, if we're going to go right into water quality, I've got a couple questions. The link that was provided to the agenda is of the 2020 report. I'm wondering why the 2021 report's not attached.
Yeah, the 2021 report isn't complete yet. Net's working on that. So unfortunately, the timing of this meeting, of these water system meetings, we don't have the completed report for, and she is changing the format to a single report of all the municipal water systems to try and reduce the level of effort required. But I did ask her about sort of the highlights about water quality, this year relative to last year, and it's essentially the same issues, which is, what you'd expect in a system with chlorinated lake water as the source without filtration. The pumps, they do need to have arsenic filters, which are costly to maintain and replace. But the pumps don't have to be used all that much. It's really just.
Speaking of pumps, I noticed in the report that was it in 2020 the wells were not. It was reported that the wells and the pumps were not used at all, even though
they were used in 2020. I think they were used. They were used last year, but that's that seems to be the case that the
so was that an oversight or was that a plan? Or we're curious because we were in stage 4 water conservation requirements in 2020 and was really quite surprised to read that the pumps and the wells were not turned on at all.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that for you. I don't know the answer.
Okay. Sorry, carry on. Just as you're passing over topics, I've had questions regarding those, so carry on.
Okay. The other thing that we're in the process of looking at is asset management and developing an asset management plan for all of the water systems. So that would essentially be building on the capital improvement items that were identified as part of the grant application, and rehabilitating the remainder of the water system. And that's probably more like a 10-year plan or more. But we're trying to get a better handle on what those costs will be, and what the 10-20-year capital replacement plan is for the water system, and what that means in terms of money that will have to be borrowed, and what the costs to the users over that time period will be. We haven't made enough of a advancement of that plan to be able to share it with you at this meeting, unfortunately. But that's something we're working on.
That's a good thing to work on. How do you take into account whether we're connected to Cove Bay or not, or whether we're having to replace our parts or bits and pieces of our own system 10 and 20 years out, when frankly we're kind of at a stalemate right now?
Well, your replacement of water mains and equipment is going to have to occur regardless of the source, whether the source is the existing reservoir or connection to Cove Bay. Essentially,
I understand that, but I thought the project, the 3 phases of the project includes basically replacement of the mains all the way from the end of Eagle Cliff almost to the connection to Cove Bay.
It involves replacement of a lot of the main, but not all of it. There's still some components of the water system that will be that wouldn't be part of that project.
Okay, I misunderstood. I was, based on what I had seen of the plans, I thought it was pretty much all of the main down Eagle Cliff.
Well, that's all I really had as an update on the system. If there's any questions about that.
Patrick, I have a quick question. Just in regards to, maybe we're taking a step back, just in regards to the current system, the current reservoir. We had a brief discussion about the decommission of it. Is there any value in maintaining that reservoir for anything from firefighting needs to climate change unpredictability or things like that? Is there value in maintaining that reservoir, or can it not be connected to the system once we switch over to the Cove Bay system?
It wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't be. You wouldn't want it connected to the same system. In terms of keeping it as an emergency storage, I mean, part of the issue with it is that it's essentially an unknown liability. In order to have confidence that that reservoir on the mountainside is safe, we would probably have to invest quite a lot of money in the rehabilitation of the reservoir and dam. So then you're kind of down to proceeding on both paths of water system improvement work. That would be the main issue I see with keeping it.
Likely not an asset that Cove Bay would want to inherit either. So we would have to maintain this LAC. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay, I've got one more thing going back to the water testing, just as a bit of a heads up. The report that was attached as part of the agenda, on page 9 of 33, it gives a link that is supposed to be a link towards all the completed lab reports. And when I clicked on that link on the Muni website, it did not carry forward. It was a dead link. So I was unable to look with any detail at the actual water report. So if you could look into that, that would be appreciated. And lastly, I think the bottom line on that page said something to the effect of, and Eagle Cliff has an elevated level of manganese. And again, I wanted to find the details of that in the lab reporting, and it wasn't available. I don't know if you can comment on the manganese. Is that something that's new, or something newly being measured, or what's going on there?
This is from 2020. I believe there was an issue, a sampling issue. I don't think we did have manganese. I didn't think it was Eagle Cliff, but we did have that and looked into it and weren't able to find any possible reason other than usually when you have an anomalous result that doesn't make sense, it's the sampling itself that has caused that.
Okay, well, that was in the report that was identified as part of the Eagle Cliff, so it might be worth looking into, and if you could confirm that, that would be great. The other thing that I wanted to bring up on the sampling, or the other question I had on the sampling, is the two sample sites and the difference in the readings on the THMs and HAAs. The 1592 sample site, I think, is the address. Shows that the THMs and HAAs are above the recommended maximum standards, but yet it seems like it's fine at the other testing site. Is there a reason for that, or an explanation there?
Again, that's something I'll have to look into and get back to you on.
Okay, and I noticed again in the 2019 report that the HAAs and THMs from both sample sites were well within the standard and below the maximum levels, but it was just the 2020 that at the one site was elevated. So again, I was wondering, had there been any further follow-up on that, or should there be, or what does 2021 show us? Do we have a pattern here, or something that's elevating, or is this again a sample anomaly? And again, that's an item that's only tested once a year.
Yeah, I know there was elevated levels in 2021. I'd have to confirm whether it was at both sample taps or just the one.
It was just the one.
And I mean, the staff do try and adjust the chlorination procedures to try and minimize those byproducts, as well as to keep the residuals up where they need to be.
Okay. Okay. Just again, that's just an observation that I had in looking at the report that was provided. So thank you. Okay.
Quick question, Tim, and again, sorry, it's not on that topic, but I just wanted to circle back on another thing. I think it was actually Jim that brought it up, just in regards to the time. Like, I think it's optimistic to suggest that this connection could possibly happen within 3 years. Like, we've got a long ways to go. We've got to figure out the grant funding and all that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of work to be done. We're going to be operating on this system for a long time, and Jim's comment about, what about all the building permits that are currently being issued in the Eagle Cliff area, that's going to put more pressure and more strain on this already exhausted system. Is it within the purview of this committee to put forward a recommendation to council to suggest that any new building permits issued within Eagle Cliff have a requirement for rainwater collection systems to be associated with them, or things like that? Is that something that could be considered on an island-wide basis? I just think that there's just so many issues when it comes to, we don't have a water supply issue on this island. We have a water storage issue, and I think if new builds could take a little bit of pressure off with some rainwater collection systems or things like that, is that something that this committee could put a recommendation into council for? Maybe Liam can answer that, I guess.
And yeah, the committee could put a recommendation in, and we've heard that from others too, and that's actually something staff have been looking at as well. So there are some CD comprehensive development areas on the island where that's already a requirement, and that's been part of their subdivision approval process. So that's certainly a recommendation the committee could make to council. And I do also want to identify that staff are also looking at the capacity of Eagle Cliff and of every water system to be able to add more users to it. And so Eagle Cliff is on our radar, and we're looking at it very closely right now and considering the possibility of saying, okay, well, you know, if how many more connections can be made to the system. And so anybody that's within the system, you know, would be able to carry on. But if we're talking about, you know, connecting, like expanding the system to bring in adjacent properties that aren't currently connected, that would be something that we'd be very cautious about. And we're really considering whether we should actually restrict that until we have greater capacity and certainty on that capacity.
We have had requests recently from properties that are supplied on Bluff Creek, which is not it's not always year round, to connect to the Eagle Cliff system, and we have said that it's you know, we're not expanding the system at this time.
Okay, but I mean, there's still lots that are going up and selling and being sold, and you know, what can be or should be done about that in terms of you know, the expectation of people that says, okay, I just bought my new lot, going to build my dream house. Here we are. Anyway, just.
Yeah, so for that, we're taking a close look, and we're also cognizant of the possibility of subdivision too, and so we want to be really cautious and careful around that. And yeah, any opportunities for reducing demand on any of the systems on the island is a great idea. You know, so we need to be thinking about all options available to us. And the rainwater harvesting is definitely one that's come up from a number of different systems too. Okay, so Glenn, do you want to put forward a motion in that regard, or?
Allison, do you want to comment on this first?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say, maybe I don't know how many lots there are that are unbuilt on in Eagle Cliff right now. So maybe you need to cover that off. I know we had a report from Daniel a while back, and I haven't had a chance to go dig it out on unbuilt lots. So, and then the other question would be, word your motion in such a way that you ask council to look into, because the other question I guess I've got is, can we at a building permit stage actually enforce requirements that are not in the building code?
Building code, yeah.
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 So look into rather than require.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whether this should be ongoing or temporary, I don't know either.
Oh, it's good to be ongoing for people to have rainwater collection for their gardens and stuff like that. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that because what you're talking about here is setting aside or reducing consumption overall. And that's something that I think the municipality can do through when we get to our billing cycle. Included in that billing cycle is a letter that explains, you know, the average household uses so many gallons. And you got to be careful, because a lot of people don't understand. I think the standard is that 1 cubic meter of water should be available to each person. And then that works out to about 200 gallons at a time. So what are people actually consuming per day on an average? And we used to do that in Eagle Cliff. We would let people know you consumed 125. And at one time, our average was in the neighborhood of 80 gallons per day. Yeah. And that's, to me, is like, it's the one thing we have control of. And in a sense that we can say, you know, advertise it anywhere there's information about it, you know, watch your water usage, like find out what each person's using and inform them. You know, I don't know. It's just, cutting down water usage is just the way to do it, because you're actually controlling it. And I know the municipality started something about informing people, but what's the follow-up?
Yeah. So I don't see it actually specifically on the agenda.
Yeah.
Though there was a water consumption report included as part of the package, and I couldn't help but notice that you know, all but sort of 6 users are well below the 200 gallons per day use.
Yeah.
And it seems that there's still, we implemented a few years ago the escalating rate structure such that, I think it's anything over, is it 250 gallons a day is at a cost of $3 per gallon. And we still continue to have at least 2 real heavy users. Seems to be fairly consistent up in the plus 500 gallons per day range. And I know that I've asked in the past if we could identify who those users are so that we could, investigate exactly what might or might not be going on there. And that was not information that the Muni was willing to share. I don't know if there's a change in that thought process or whether the municipality is willing and interested in going out and directly discussing with these people, where's the water going? Do we have a leak that is not being investigated, or is there something going on there?
Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but for heavy uses such as that, there would be a notice on their bill that would flag that for them, and that there is also a program in place where we will assist people to identify and repair leaks.
But that's if this 500 gallons a day is a leak. If it's actual consumption, though, what's going on there?
They still get the flag. They still get the red flag on their bill, and whether they do something about it or not, it's up to them.
Okay,
could these high consuming? I would hope that possibly the municipality could also cross-reference whether these high consumption homes have business permits for short-term rentals in place. If there's a way that we can also identify whether that's, that question's been raised many times. Is it the short-term rental properties that are high consumers in the summertime? Or is there another reason? I think getting to the source rather than just suggesting, hey, you might want to look in case you have a leak. What is the reason there's so much consumption? 500 gallons a day is crazy. That's just an open tap running all the time. So I don't know if that's something that the municipality could also consider looking at. I assume that short-term rentals now are permitted. Would hope, and maybe we can cross-reference to see if any of the high users are short-term rentals.
Okay. I don't know, Liam, are you going to comment on that, or you're basically done?
Yeah, I think we can look into it, but yeah.
Okay. Obviously, that's a concern when you don't have a lot of water and you have some people that are consistently using enormous amounts. You have to ask why or what's going on. That's the bottom line there. Okay, I see Allison's hand up.
Sorry, I never took it down.
Okay.
But it just occurred to me because I've heard this question from other water systems as well as our own. Have you wandered around and looked at who's got the really nice green lush gardens and knocked on their doors?
Well, I think that's the point. In Eagle Cliff, there's not a lot of flat land for lush gardens as well. So, where's the water going into some degree? But yeah, I understand.
And we also know that at least some of the lush gardens have their own cisterns. So I don't know that that's necessarily the indicator. Okay, and I saw Dave waving his hand. Sorry, you're muted again, Dave.
Dave,
there you go.
For Allison, the number of potential individual lots in Eagle Cliff was 140. That should be our maximum build out. And everything we did in the past was based on the assumption that we'd have 150 gallons a day for up to 140 houses. On my property, I could legally put in 8 houses more, which I will never do because of my topography. And probably with the new rules, I could put in another 8 more secondary suites, which was never considered. Now we have quite a few homes on Eagle Cliff that have secondary suites that were never counted on being there in the first place. And I imagine while we have approximately 110 houses hooked up, there are probably the equivalent of 115 or 120 who are actually would count if every secondary suite were included. As far as the people that consume a lot of water, when I was running the system, we had a person who was using an unbelievable amount, and they wouldn't do anything about it. And eventually I just went and shut their water off, and they had a broken line, and they were dumping literally thousands of gallons a week going into the ground. And by shutting their water off and saying it's staying off until you fix it, they did fix it. But if somebody's using 500 or 600 gallons a day on a regular basis, it seems to me the probability is not the extra suite, but the probability of a leak somewhere between the meter and the house. And unless the municipality goes to these people and says, you probably have a leak, unless you fix it, we're going to shut your water off. Otherwise, why would anybody, if you got enough money to pay $2,000 a year for a water bill, which is ridiculous, they're not going to bother digging the line up or find out where the leak is. Surely the municipality can go in there and find out if it's a leak or it's just overconsumption. Why don't they?
Well, we do that, and we have shut people's water off where there's an apparent leak. So that's something we'll continue.
But if we still have a couple of houses, 3 or 4 houses that are running 500 or 600 gallons a day, obviously that's not been effective.
Okay.
Water.
Well, we only have so much capacity, David.
I realize you got a hell of a load on your head there, Patrick. But when we ran the system, we managed to find all of our leaks and pretty well kept them under control. It seems to me that I realize how many problems you have. Our system is a problem, and I'm sure there's another 5 or 6 problems in every other area, but it still needs to be looked at.
Well, it is. If I can, the amount of staff time that went into trying to discover leaks in Eagle Cliff over the past couple of years, and like we mentioned earlier, the big issues were addressed, and it wasn't on private property. It was in the public right of ways around the Highland Trail area. We'll follow up with the high use users, and that's all we can do. We'll follow up.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. I saw Kristen's
David,
hand up.
can I just interject for a moment? I will say, and I'm going to present a little bit of information about consumption for y'all later in my presentation, but my recollection is in Eagle Cliff years ago, you had a couple of property owners who were high users, and I know for a fact that they were notified, and they have been notified. I know for a fact that Annette sends letters and notifies these people, despite the fact that they get these letters and they pay these exorbitant bills. They're high users, and I don't know what else the municipality could be expected to do about those 1 or 2 people that use a lot of water. I don't think that there's really anything else that we can do other than notify and bill them and set the overuse rate as high or higher.
Okay.
It's the same accounts as my recollection.
Yeah, that's what I seem to recall as well. And looking at the graph, there does seem to be a pattern of about 5 or 6 users that, and I don't have addresses, I just have, numbers, and it does seem to be a fairly consistent number that is up there. So I'm just looking at the comments in the chat box. I think Jim's asked a good question. Is there a policy established for other areas of the island which can be applied to new permits on Eagle Cliff? And I think you're talking rainwater harvesting. Allison, I think that comes down to building code again, is it not?
Well, I guess there's several different issues. Like down at Cowan Point, when we did the rezoning, we required them all to have rainwater catchment and plant native plants. And that was a covenant that was put on all the properties. So it's easy to do in a rezoning process. I'm not sure about the legalities of when you just go to straight subdivide or when you apply for a building permit as to whether you can, you know, like answers I've had before on questions of building permit. We can't require people to do anything more than what the building code allows, because that was an issue with low flush toilets until they changed the building code. And I think it's an issue with sprinkler systems too. But I'm not sure with the water systems if we can require somebody to have that's going to connect to the system that before they connect, they have to have rainwater catchment. So that's something we would need to look into.
Okay.
Or
So,
whether with your users, you can, you know, I don't know how 1,000 gallons a day is used by a lot of people in other water systems for watering their gardens. So your 500 sounds light compared to some other experiences.
All right. Okay, so any other discussion on this topic matter? Glenn, do you want to put a motion forward on that, or you want to just put it in park it for a while? Or
I'd be willing to put forward a motion to request council to, what do you say, Allison, consider or look into, request council for the Eagle Cliff local area community to request council to look into requiring any new building permits issued in the Eagle Cliff local area to have a water storage solution. You know, it doesn't have to be rainwater harvesting, I suppose. I mean, if there's tanks that can be filled in January, I don't know. But I would like to suggest some sort of water storage solution be looked into.
Can you say building permits / new connections? Building permits or new connections?
Yes.
Yeah.
okay, so just for administrative purposes, Sophie, are you working on making sure that this is captured? And I know what we've done in the past with this kind of thing is we put that up on the screen, we wordsmith it until we got it where we wanted it, and then, you know, pass the motion or seconded, put it forward, seconded, and then voted on. Is that a possibility? Could you put something like that up?
Yep. Can you see my screen there?
Yep.
Sorry, it's a little bit tiny.
And a little crowded. The council directs staff to research a requirement for any new building permits / new connections to the Eagle Cliff water system in the local survey. Water storage solution. Do we want to, I know what you're saying, and I liked what you said about storing the you know, using the water tanks for even filling in the winter when water is not a shortage. Do you think that's, does that cover it, Glenn, in your opinion?
Well, we could say water capture or storage solution
yeah, I like that. And or storage solution. And again, I know that Allison's not a fan of brackets, but I'd like to throw a bracket in there, and, you know, examples: rainwater storage, water storage, collecting water during winter months.
Yeah.
And whether or not we should be requesting them to, I'm just trying to think about capacity. I mean, you know, a 50 gallon barrel by the side of your house isn't going to do much, whether that's something that they should consider as far as volume, but whether we need to suggest that or not, I don't know.
Yeah, it has to be a really big tank or it's not going to amount to anything.
I think that's part of the research piece.
Yeah. Okay.
Before we start nailing numbers down to this.
Yeah, I like that.
We could say
Okay.
Substantial storage solution. Just put in the word substantial, or substantial water capture and storage solution.
Can I just add, we've got a resolution, an agenda item on the council meeting tonight. That's a letter from the Garden Club sort of asking us to do virtually the same sort of thing.
Okay.
So is there anybody on the committee that would be willing to help do the research? Thinking of capacity for staff.
Depending on what's involved, I mean, I can tell you that at our house, we have 2,650 gallons of rainwater collection, and it's shocking how fast the system fills with rain collected on the roof, and how we've not been able to drain 2,650 gallons for gardens and car washing and boat washing and all that stuff as long as we've been here. That's just an experience. It's not necessarily research, but it is factual. Anyway, can we put this forward as a motion? You're submitting that, Glenn. Do we have a seconder? Now I can't see everybody's face, so maybe
I'll second it. Jim will second it.
Now, do we have to second from within the committee?
Yes.
Yes, you do.
That's my understanding. Okay, so that was Len seconds?
Yeah, I'll second. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, Len. And committee votes for, hands up. That sounds like it looks like it's carried. Thank you. Okay, so that's wraps that one up nicely. Okay, so I think we're moving on now to finance, which is Kristen. And sorry, I didn't mean to jump all over your water consumption report. I just didn't see it as part of the things that you were going to discuss.
Okay.
Chair, I just want to be cognizant of time because we're 10 minutes over what was scheduled. And if we're going to carry on, I just got to bump another meeting. So is everybody good to carry on?
I know I am.
Got about 5 minutes till I've got to leave.
And
is this for the committee?
Yeah.
I'd really like to hear of Kristen's report. So
I agree with that. It's time sensitive. We've got budget.
Yeah.
So
all right.
So Kristen, you're up.
All right. So I'm sharing my screen. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Yes.
From the beginning. Here we go. Okay. So we'll start with the operating revenue, Eagle Cliff's parcel tax. As you know, there's two.
Sorry, Kristen, I pulled out my sheet of all the things that you've got in terms of the budget stuff, and I realized that there's going to be some discussion on this. So Liam, I don't know whether we're going to be able to meet your 5-minute timeline if you're going to stick around for the duration here.
It wasn't my 5-minute timeline. No, somebody else that spoke up about that.
That's just for me.
Oh, okay. Ian,
yeah.
Yours was a timeline, and Liam, you said you were going to have to bump another meeting.
Yeah, I'm just going to bump the other meeting right now as we go. So.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to say that this is going to be, I think, longer than 5 minutes.
Okay. So let's if we could just let me get through it, and then we can save all the questions to the end, and that way everybody can see the whole presentation. And if they have to leave for the discussion part, they can leave for the discussion part, and that way we can make sure that everybody is provided with the full picture of information. Thank you. So the parcel tax as the first component of the Eagle Cliff revenue each year. There is 2 pieces to that. One is the $20 float tax, and one is the $370 parcel tax per property, and it's paid on both of the connected properties and the unconnected properties. In 2022, we're proposing that we increase that parcel tax by $30 and move that from $370 to $400. And in the ensuing years 2 to 5, we're proposing that we increase that parcel tax by about 5% each year. And there's no contemplated changes to that $20 float tax. On the user rate revenue side, the budgeted revenue for 2021 was 66,000. And I understand that in the 5-year plan last year, there were contemplated increases of 20% each year. So I've put in a 20% revenue requirement increase that works out to about $14,000 for 2022 over and above 2021 collections. We're going to get there a couple of ways. We're going to increase the revenue requirement by $14,000 overall. We're going to get there by increasing all of the flat rates. I think it's important that those rates are increased more at the top end of usage than at the bottom end of usage. And in order to do that, a bit of a collapse of the 4th and 5th tier to just close those tiers a little bit. Looking at your rate structure now, you have, we read the meters and we bill you based on that metered usage in the summer, because that tends to be the highest time for consumption. So people are billed on their highest consumption period. There are several different rates from 0 to 50, from 51 to 100, 101 to 150, 151 to 175, 176 to 200, and 200 to 225, and then over 225. So you have a flat rate for anybody who falls within that tier of consumption, and over 225 gallons per day, people are paying $3 per gallon. Now, it's important to note that 85% of the residents are using less than that 150 imperial gallons per day per threshold in the summer months. So most, by far and away, most residents in Eagle Cliff are mindful of their consumption and they keep consumption down. And that's well below a cubic meter per day. 220 is a cubic meter per day. So 150 to be below that is quite reasonable consumption, and people are mindful of it. That's what that tells me. You do have the top 8. These are the people who are above 200. These are the only people above 200 a day. So there's 8 accounts in total. And from there, their 2021 water bill generated $10,343 of revenue. That's about 15% of all of Eagle Cliff's revenue. And that came from 7% of the users. So under this new proposed rate structure then, if everything stayed the same and those users didn't change their consumption habits, their bills would increase by almost $2,000 under a new proposed rate structure, and that would generate $12,228 instead of the $10,343. You can see here that by far 86% are under that 150 gallon a day threshold. And this just kind of shows where the rest of the people are sitting. So there aren't really that many people that are over 151 gallons a day. So under the new proposed rate structure, I'm proposing that we get rid of that middle tier that goes from 150 to 175 and 175 to 200, and just keep them in 50 gallon a day increments, and increase the flat rates on all of those tiers by an increasing amount. So for the first tier, I'm recommending that we increase the rate by 105, and for the second tier by 115, for the third tier by 140, and then when we start getting over 150 gallons per day, we start increasing that increment more. So between 150 to 200 would see an increase of 172. And over 200 would see an increase of about $235. And those are averages. The rest of the 5-year financial plan, it does include 20% increases in each of those years. So this is just 5 years out. If we stayed on this track of 20% increases each year, this is what the flat rates would be looking at, going from 630 up to 1306 by the end of year 5. So that's some pretty steep increases for Eagle Cliff. But again, with those capital costs that are in the, that you're looking at, you can see why we're going to have to increase revenue to that extent. I'm looking at the expenses. I broke this down just for the first year anyways. There are some additional expenses this year going from 68,092 up to about 80,269. So in 2021, our salaries are higher. We did have some one-time related, costs that were related to implementation of the collective agreement. So I do believe that salaries should drop for 2022 once we take account of all of those extra one-time costs that we incurred. In 2022, we would be looking at increased costs for vehicle fuel and maintenance. The budget's going from 1,400 to 2,400 based on the 2021 expenditure of 2,200 for vehicle fuel and maintenance costs. We also have an increased provision for supplies and materials, and also there's some, of course, consideration for dam repairs, that kind of thing. So given that conversation that we had at the beginning of the meeting, following up with the lining of the dam, I probably need to include a couple thousand more, and I heard up to about $5,000 for that. So I will confirm that amount with Patrick, but I think at this point we need to add 5,000 to the operation, to the maintenance and supplies budget for 5,000 for that. We've added a provision for consulting fees. It's just a provision. We don't have any contracts at this moment with anybody, but we will need to make sure that there's some money set aside to engage consultants to continue to work on the longer term capital plan. And we have increased insurance and auditor costs that we know that we'll be incurring in 2022. So I've increased that budget provision there too. And lastly, every second year, I believe, Patrick can confirm, but every second year there's a hydrant maintenance that's done. I think they take the hydrants apart and they service them and they put them back together again. So Eagle Cliff's share of that cost is about $2,500, and I put that in starting this year. And then lastly, in rent and utilities, there's hydro in there, and there's also every water system gets an allocation of overhead municipal rent and expense overhead. So Eagle Cliff has a $400 per year allocation of municipal rent overhead. In years 2 to 5, the expenses, we've basically just taken those expenses and increased them by a 2% inflationary factor. So you'll see in 2023, we've got 81,000 and going up to 133,834. Those are just the operating expenses, but you'll see there's a new line that I've included for debt interest. I've added a provision here for interest on any debt that would start in year 2024 if that capital plan as outlined goes ahead. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the capital side. In 2021, the work completed in the capital section of the budget was less than what was budgeted for. And in the 2022 plan for capital, the only thing we've got are just some provisions there for equipment failures and replacing that equipment. And again, we're waiting for that decision on how to proceed with upgrades goes. So we've really left the 2022 capital budget quite clear, and we'll just wait and see how those grant applications go. But in the 2023 and 2024 and beyond budget, we've also included the annual provision for that equipment failure and having a provision there to replace that stuff. And we've also added an annual provision to phase in meter replacements. Those meters in Eagle Cliff are very old. And I think I heard Patrick mention earlier about putting in a phased approach to meter replacements would give us much better information about consumption and water usage, and allow us to intervene more quickly in the fact when we know that there are leaks.
Kristen, can I just ask a quick question about a slide? I think it was one back or maybe two back. There was right there, the approved budget for 2021, that $130,000. Mm-hmm. Is that coming from our reserve funds?
It ended up only being 83, which yes, came from reserve funds.
Okay, because I know we approved up to 80. So I was just, I wasn't sure where that 130 came from.
Yeah. I just pulled it out of the budget that was already done. I guess I'd have to go back through the last meeting where the budget was approved to hear what the discussion was around it, unless Patrick's.
So the 83 that was spent, that is for phase 1 design. Patrick, is that correct?
Yeah. So there was the preliminary design for the overall, like the concept review and options analysis. Some of that cost spilled over into 2021. And then there was the design work to advance it to essentially about 50% design for the capital works and develop Class C cost estimates, which is the stage it's at now.
So we're going to be kind of in a holding pattern with the work that's done to date until we hear back about the grants before we do any more. Is that right, Patrick?
That's what we discussed with this committee at the last meeting.
So that $97,907 came from our capital reserve fund.
It did.
Of what we had, it was around 200. Tim, do you know how much?
We'll get to that too. If you
Okay,
just want to hold up.
Sorry, we'll keep going.
Okay. So budgeted capital in years 2 to 5. You can see here, we've got those ongoing equipment replacement and meter replacement provisions. And here's where we've started to put in the actual full capital costs of this very early stage interconnection with Cove Bay. So 2.3 million in year 2023, 1.173 million in year 2024, and 1.3 million in years 2025. Now the funding for that, it assumes a combination of 70% grant and 30% debt. So in each of those 3 years, I assumed funding for 1.6 million would come from grants and 600,000 would come from debt proceeds, new debt. So that has been put into the budget. It's those numbers are going to change as work and more design and what's going to happen in the project becomes more clear. Those numbers will change. So I'm putting them in now as a means to signal to the Eagle Cliff residents, you know, what the costs of those projects are down the line. I'm sorry if this one's a bit blurry. It's just a picture, but it is part of the agenda, this piece. So I've just kind of laid it out here to show you the phases of the projects. So 2.3 million is put into 2023, 1.173 million is put into 2024, and 1.353 million is put into 2025. The funding sources that we would match against those projects, again, some of it, 70% of those capital costs would be funded through grant. 30% of it would come through proceeds of debt. And then there's always going to be a little bit of upfront kind of design. Just we've created a provision there to take from the Eagle Cliff Reserve to fund the full capital cost of those projects. So you did see, I showed you there was an allocation or an expense in the operating budget to deal with the interest payments. I've made the assumption that short-term borrowing would be done for all the initial phases, and then it would be rolled up into one big debt at the end of the big capital project. So I've only included an interest provision for the initial years of the project. So 23,000 of interest has been allocated for the borrowings in 2023, and interest in year 4 for the additional amount that was borrowed in year 3. And then finally in 2026, you would see that that full amount of that debt and the interest on that would be rolled up into one big debenture. And that would have a carrying cost of in total about $77,000. Right there, 77,000. That's 47,000 annually in interest and almost 31,000 a year in principal repayment. So the cost to finance a $77,000 annual payment. Among what Eagle Cliff has now is 124 properties, and that is about $627 annually. But also those costs, that's the whole capital project, those costs would be shared with those other benefiting properties along the way and between Eagle Cliff and Cove Bay. So it wouldn't, I anticipate there would be additional properties beyond the 124 that are just within the Eagle Cliff boundaries. Talking about your funds. So the very first column here, the January 2021 opening fund balance was in total, Eagle Cliff had about $318,000. That was made up of $229 that's in the works reserve, $88,000 that was in your surplus fund, and $30 in your float fund. So altogether 318. And if we take into account those budgeted contributions and those budgeted withdrawals that are included in that whole 5-year plan, at the end of 2022, next year, you should have $304,000 if everything goes according to that plan. And then we just carry that same pattern on. We take the opening balance from the prior year and we add the new contributions and we deduct the capital expenditures that we anticipate. And we end up at the end of 5 years with a capital reserve fund balance of about 492. This doesn't give any consideration for the capital project that is in the budget. And if I did put that in, you would be looking at the drawdown of $50,000 in 2023 that was related to that capital project, and another drawdown of $60,000 in 2024, also related to that capital project. That would leave the ending fund reserve balance at about $382,000 at the end of 5 years. So I think that's it. So now,
thank you, Kristen. So
all of your questions.
I've got a bunch, and I'd like to go right back to the beginning, if I might.
Yeah.
So
You want me to move it up?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, so firstly, and we had asked this of Raj, and we'd like to ask you the same. If we could have the float parcel tax and the capital water parcel tax identified separately. They're two different, completely disconnected line items.
Yeah.
And so really want them reflected separately if we could.
Okay.
If you could go to the second slide, maybe.
Okay.
My screen hasn't moved. Has yours? Okay, so I'm going to save that one. Can we go to the screen that has the multi-year planned budget?
The expenditure side?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
The actuals and the approved, et cetera, that.
This one?
Nope, keep going. Oh, so you've broken them down. Okay. I'm looking at what was handed out as part of the agenda, and I'm trying to get the match to that.
Well, these are all just taken from it. They're just smaller pieces of it because it's an awfully big document and it's hard to really focus in. So do you want,
okay.
Are you talking about expenses or are you talking about revenues?
Yes. So I'm looking at, sorry, go ahead.
Len, I think you want Tim, sorry, I think you want the one before, the one that has 2021 budget and actual. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, and
yes.
then you can look at 2022 in comparison, but you're going to have to look at this one for the rest of the years out, which I think for your centers. So that's the one I think you're wanting.
This? Yeah.
There you go. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, I haven't even looked at the years out yet. So some things that are really apparent is the one-time salary increase or cost or whatever was associated with that. had a huge impact on the planned budget versus the approved, or the actual versus the approved, on the salary benefits. So that we're not looking at that again. We're just we're looking at sort of a, what is that, a 10%, 15% increase from the 37.2 up to the 42.6.
Yeah, 42.6 would be Eagle Cliff's share of the utility operators. And then there's some administrative overhead wages that are assigned to water systems. So there's one position in Public Works that is fully dedicated to utilities. Then there's a portion of Patrick's time and a portion of my time as well.
Okay, so you get
Liam for free.
Approved and actual 2021, that seemed to be a fairly big discrepancy, and you kind of explained that in the one-time costs, but
yeah,
we're still expecting a major bump between 21 approved and 22 draft.
Yeah.
Okay. The next line, the 17,000, again, seems like a fairly major bump from 14.2, especially considering the actuals were only 11 or 11.8, almost 12.
Yeah, there's some unspent things that weren't spent, but I'm still continuing to budget for those, irrespective of the fact they weren't spent last year. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. So there's a possibility that that could be spent this year. I'm still going to continue to budget for the same expenses year over year. And then I've added because the fuel, and I know where the gas prices are going this year, so I'm concerned there. I put an increased provision in there. And then what I did was I added just an extra amount that wasn't there last year, just in case, because we know all of this stuff that's in there for dam. I added 3,000.
Okay, so the dam, I think, should not come out of the operating. That should come out of the capital budget. And I would look at that, and if you want to look at as a capital definition, it extends the life potentially of that dam. And so I would think that that qualifies as a capital expense and should not be considered part of the O&M.
Oh, okay. I don't want to get into arguments over in a meeting, but the end result is the impact will be a reduction of transfer to your surplus account. So
I understood, but so here's I mean, without going into the line by line, here's where I'm having a problem. It seems that this year the rate structure that we had met the requirement of the expenses.
Yeah,
we are looking the proposed rate structure increases, which while you suggested they're escalating, they're not. It's 20% across the board when you do the math. The only one that sees an increase in their rate is the 176 to 200 grouping, which sees a 25% increase, but the over 200 to 225 would then see only a 15% increase. So I don't think we met the requirement or the intention of increasing the higher end users' costs more than the base rates. And at the 20% increase, we went through a major increase in our rate structure 2 years ago. And to be looking at another 20% when the money that we collected was sufficient to meet our expenses, I'm struggling with. I don't see the connection there.
Kristen, can we go back to that slide? Can we just take a look at that slide where it shows the 20% increases for connected properties year over year?
That
yeah.
It was this one versus the previous one.
There was a 5-year one.
This one?
That's it.
Yeah,
So,
there you go. Again, if we are connecting to Cove Bay as an example, okay, so right now, if we look at our average water consumer, and let's say it's the second lowest tier, the 50 to 100 group, okay, they're paying $575 per year plus $370 per year in the parcel tax for a total of $945. And at that rate, we're able to meet our expenses. So tacking 20%, 20%, 20% onto that, to me, just it is completely unjustified, especially when I look at what the Cove Bay rates are, which is $260 triennial. So once every 4 months, they get billed $260, and that's both their O&M and their capital. And for that, they're getting 220 gallons per day, which is above our rates even here. So at 260 times 3 is $780 per year. We're already at 945. I'm not sure why the rates need to go up.
Can I just ask as well, are we looking at just operating costs here, or has this got debt servicing included in it, Kristen?
It has debt servicing included in year 3, I think.
Year 3.
Yeah. Oops, sorry, I'll go back this way. Yeah, see debt starting to kick in 2024, the very bottom line, debt interest, right there.
Okay.
There's also a, that's just the interest. And then in 2026, there would be a provision for principal repayment as well.
So the
Patrick,
challenge, the challenge I'm trying to understand, sorry, Patrick, I'm just trying to understand if we're using these numbers, but we don't actually know how many new connections are going to come along with this this connection to Cove Bay. So the reality is that if we pick up several new connections along the way, these numbers are irrelevant, right? They will come down. Is that correct?
They will come down, yeah.
Okay. Do we have any sense for that number? That's what I'm trying to understand. Like, you know, there was a survey that was put out about how many people would be willing to connect. And I know that that's not great data that was recovered, but is there a way to look at this more realistically? Because I'm fairly certain that these numbers are inflated. I mean, this is looking to me like this is if the current Eagle Cliff connections that are in place right now was to pay for this whole thing, this is what it's going to unfold like, but that's not really the case. Is that correct?
No, but I feel there's a benefit to looking at it from a worst case scenario perspective, because if you plan for the worst and you come out better, then you end up with that extra money sitting in your reserve fund at the end of the year.
I get it. I agree. I just want to make sure that we can make that clear to everybody who's trying to understand all these numbers, because it's not very clear. It looks to me like this is it. You're set for 20% increases for the next 5 years. And I think we have to make sure that everybody who's you know, going to be billed for this understands that that number is not necessarily realistic. And I hope to see it come down substantially with the number of new connections. And again, I don't really know how many are coming on board and how that's going to reflect those numbers. The only other thing I'm going to say just while I'm speaking is I would agree with Tim. I think in looking at the increases year on year by the 20%, you know, I have a hard time really punishing people who are doing their jobs with water conservation and people who are under 50 gallons a day. To see those kinds of increases coming at them is really disheartening, and it makes them wonder why they try. And I think that we should be weighting it a little bit heavier towards the heavy users in regards to increases year on year. That's my 2 bits. Thank you.
I would say that there's so much unknown with this project at the moment that beyond the first year, until you know, I mean, if this grant doesn't come through, then I mean, look at how expensive it is with 70% grant funding.
Yeah.
If this grant is not successful, then it's back to the drawing board, I think. Like,
I agree. And that's my frustration is there's so much unknown. And
yeah, so I would caution that what we need to, until we know about the funding for that capital project, really to go beyond year 1 is we're putting a blindfold on and throwing darts at the wall. Like it just.
Yeah, I agree. It's just people are digesting these numbers and it's really not going down well. So I want to make sure that that's clear, that we really are just throwing darts at a wall.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, these kind of numbers will set people's hair on fire. and again, going back to my point, I don't know what we're trying to achieve. If we're trying to, bring Eagle Cliff in line with the other water systems around the island, when I start considering what our operating costs, our operating cost fees, our flat rate fees, and when we add our parcel tax into our annual fees, we're where the rest of the island is. We're above Cove Bay, obviously, by a substantial amount already. I don't know what we're trying to achieve by tacking another 20% on every year from here on in.
Oh, Tim, I just wanted to respond to that. So it's the same situation as other water systems. The expenses have been covering operations, and not very much has been put towards recapitalization of the system. And so that anything substantial requires debt financing. I mean, ideally, we get the municipal water systems to a place where they do have substantial reserves and are able and have the resiliency to respond to capital replacement needs using those reserves. And that's really the intent of the increases are to cover, escalation in operations as well as build up reserves.
Understood, but if that's the goal, then because we have a separate parcel tax for capital reserves, that's where an increase should be reflected. The operating cost, the fees should cover the operating costs.
Except that doesn't then get to the desire to collect more fees from higher use properties.
Understood, and if we need to, I understand the costs are going to go up. I get that, I understand that, but to punish people across the board at 20% ongoing, I don't think is reasonable. If we want to revisit what our flat rate structure fee is to again, increase the higher end as additional encouragement, that's addressing that as an issue. I don't see the need to go 20% across the board though. So I mean, if we're looking for Eagle Cliff as an LAC to look at these numbers and approve them, I struggle. I would not be willing to vote in favor of that, I'm afraid. I don't know whether we're at that point yet in discussion, but I don't know. Any other committee members want to weigh in on this?
I kind of feel the same way. It's very hard to just as I understand, this is a massive project. This is an expensive project. We don't know about the grants. We're basing it on a 70%. We don't know that. We don't know how many connections. It's just there's so many unknowns. So I'm not really sure how to proceed. And what is council looking for from us as far as to provide recommendation for at this point? Is it an approval of these numbers, or? Because as I said, we kind of, there's a lot of work that's gone into this by Kristen, and I can appreciate that it's really just, it's so hard to guess, but why move forward with numbers that we just know are not going to be correct in the end? I don't know, maybe we need to.
Well, I guess I would just push back and say the operating expenses are covered by that revenue requirement, and the amount going into the capital reserve at the end of the year is just almost about the same as the parcel taxes levied. Fair enough. I have included $2,480. I've overstated the parcel taxes by $2,480, which is the equivalent of the 124 lots that pay $20 each for that float tax. So I want to see more money going into reserve at the end of the year, and looking at the current year plan, the amount going into your reserve is very darn close to that parcel tax revenue requirement. So I do believe that the right number to raise your rates is $14,000 for the year. I hear that you're uncomfortable or you don't like the split among who's paying that. I think, as I did show you, most people are very water conscious and water conservative. And I think that because there's nowhere really to go with these high use rates, like you don't have a lot of people that are using exorbitant amounts of water that you're going to be able to collect the revenue from. I think it's going to have to be felt pretty much by most people evenly in the district, because you're all very conservative and very water conscious users. So
is it correct to say that once we do make this connection to the Cove Bay system, that then our operational rates would fall in line with what is currently being paid in Cove Bay? Like, how, is this going to be like, because we see a 4-year 20% increase, 20%, 20%, 20%. When the connection's made, do those operational costs come down because there's more users on one system?
Well, Cove Bay has some of its own challenges. Cove Bay has dedicated staff assigned to it because of the water treatment plant. They benefit a little bit because of economies of scale when we're allocating overhead and things like that to that water district. But really, we take the same approach as far as any kind of allocate. It's all done based on the number of connections in any system, so it's all proportionately distributed. So, but again, now we're just going to distribute it to a larger number, but it would still be the same amount. It's
a larger number, but you're going from 2 systems down to 1 system with a larger number of people. I'm just wondering if there's something after that, ugly 4 years of 20% increases, we can look forward to potentially bringing our annual costs down. I mean, aside from the debt servicing, obviously, but the operational year-on-year operational costs, could you suggest that might come down for people on the system?
I would say that, and I'm sure Patrick will support me on this, that now that Cove Bay has burned through all of their reserves to build a water treatment plant, they got to start making significant contributions back there to build those up again. You can't compare one system. They're all so different as far as the age of their infrastructure, whether they have debt or now that they don't have debt. There's just so many factors that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just wondering about just straight operational costs, year after year operational costs. You're going from 2 systems down to 1. Is there no savings there? I mean, aside from the debt servicing and the capital contributions and things like that, just the annual cost to operate the system.
I would say Cove Bay's is higher because they do have a dedicated staff person that is not shared between any of the other water systems.
So then just looking at it as straight math, when I look online at what the Cove Bay water system users pay for water, they're paying $260 every 4 months. That money gives them up to 220 gallons per day per user. So it's covering the operating costs for that. As well, it states on in the Cove Bay water system documentation that is also their capital contribution for equipment replacement.
Well, they don't all pay flat rates. There's a metered rate after 136. And they do have all of the commercial properties that tend to be some of them are very high water usage. So yes, Cove Bay does benefit by having a higher proportion of dense properties that pay larger water bills.
Understood, but as a
one more, I'm putting forward that metered rate needs to increase this year from whatever it is now to, I think 171 is what I put in their budget this year. So
Okay, again, I'm just going by the numbers that are available online, and as I say, as a residential user, you know, parking the commercial businesses, because we don't have any commercial businesses, though we do have apparently a couple high water users. You know, the first step is 220 gallons, a cubic meter per day per household, and if you come in under that rate, your water bill looks like $260 every 4 months, period.
Correct. Yeah.
So again, annually, that's $780 for a household. Whereas for us, we're putting forward right now $945, and we're looking at 20% over year increases on top of that.
Cove Bay also has $300 in parcel taxes per property.
And is that for debt servicing?
It is, yeah.
Again, and that's a different kettle of fish.
I don't think it is actually, because they saved that money and they spent it, and now they're trying to rebuild it again. Like it's capital. Parcel taxes pay for capital, so I think it's very difficult to make these line by line comparisons between water districts.
Okay.
I think, I mean, maybe it's helpful just to take the entire capital project out of the budget altogether and look at it just year one status quo and budget going forward for that. I don't recommend that. I think it's important to signal to people what's out there and what the potential costs could be. But, you know, and it is scary. I 100% agree with you. It's those amounts are alarming amounts, even with grant funding.
Yeah, and I understand, you know, on the capital side, I get that. I'm actually even parking that, because in my mind, none of that's happening until the grant happens, when and if that happens. And if not, we're going to continue to limp along with what we have. Yeah. I'm still kind of struggling with the 20% year over year on the operating side. That's and in terms of you know, our parcel tax, I think last year we agreed as a way to sort of boost our capital reserve somewhat. I think our increase was 58%. We agreed to last year. And so to, you know, just continue, I guess I'm aware of a certain amount of pushback from our users who are saying, hey, wait a second, things are going up and up and up, and yeah, you know, at some point we're not going to be able to afford this. So what then? I've had a point blank email just prior to this meeting that says, okay, so what's going to be in place once and if the capital project comes into play for property owners that just do not have the ability to pay. So, you know, that's going to be another thing that we're approaching. So I'm kind of cognizant of this, and I really don't like the 20% year over year flat rate across the board. But
can I just ask, because I'm very cognizant of the time, and you know, we all got days ahead of us here. So the recommendation that the Eagle Cliff Water System Local Advisory Committee recommend that council direct staff to include the draft Eagle Cliff Water System 2022 to 2026 budget as presented at its March 28th meeting in the Bowen Island Municipality 5-year plan. That's what we're being asked to do, is to recommend this budget move forward.
Yeah.
What if we don't? I don't know what our options are here. I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying, Kristen, and I want to emphasize that I appreciate the amount of information and the amount of work that you've put into this to provide us these numbers. And I appreciate that these are very, very, well, hopefully worst case scenario numbers. I would just really like to somehow be able to present them in a way to our community that they can understand that this is a worst case scenario and this is not what's coming necessarily down the pipe for us. Again, I mean, I could, you know, I'd be happy to put forward my recommendation to move this budget to council if there was a way that could be presented better. But I don't know what the solution is there, because it's scary and people are very concerned and there's questions we can't answer. And there's very big numbers in front of us. So what is the process here if we our time with
so I'm well, the process is I have to bring a budget to council, whether it's got a recommendation from Eagle Cliff or not. I think it would be important to include what, you know, the reasoning. Maybe there could be like a letter to council to provide some background as to the reasoning as to what the issues are. But we have Councillor Morris here, so maybe we might look to her for some additional guidance or information.
Oh, thanks, Kristen. I'm trying to figure out, because I've got a time constraint too. I've got to get down to the Cove for a 3 o'clock walkabout of the sewer treatment plant, another fun meeting. So I guess process-wise, you're going to present a budget to council. There's then going to be a public comment budget period, right? So I'm thinking, could the Eagle Cliff people submit questions on the Eagle Cliff budget through that public consultation period? And maybe we have to have a half-hour Zoom meeting just for them to say whether they don't have to weigh in and recommend it. But I really would like to have sort of the concerns and comments, I think, written out, and maybe we need to have a little more discussion about, you know, you did say the entire amount that's being paid in property tax, in parcel tax, is going to go into the reserve fund, looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
So I think that, so the question is just how much is going in the operating costs, and you are guessing quite a bit, you know, best estimate for what's going to happen in the future. And under the legislation, we have to do a 5-year financial plan. So I don't think it's, you know, I mean, the other worst case scenario you could put in there is if you don't get any grant funding and throw that into the 5-year financial plan.
No,
and
let's not put that in.
No. So, you know, we're hoping we're going to get a grant, and, you know, maybe putting so much into 2023 is, you know, a bit of a, you know, not kind of optimistic, because we don't know whether we're going to even hear about the grant until 2023.
Yeah.
What's your deadline, Kristen, for your submission? Friday.
Friday, yeah.
No, that's Friday for the package for council, right? For our, because we're going to have a special, we're having a budget presentation meeting, right? If I got that right.
Yeah, that's not till April 11th though, but we are, we're going to the finance committee.
The finance committee, we're meeting on April the 7th.
Correct.
So this could go forward as is, with comments that the Eagle Cliff people are not happy with the increases and
that are being proposed.
Kristen,
yeah,
what would be the impact if you cut that 20% in half and went 10%? Because you said you don't know where the darts are really landing. Wouldn't that still, I mean, that's even going to stick in people's craw, you know. It's just that type of thing. But you know what I mean is, can that number be made to be more user friendly and satisfy your need to have it that way? You know, because you're doing it for the right reasons as far as you're concerned, but we're the ones who ultimately pay. And as Tim has said, some people may not be able to pay. And like I said,
well, that's an advantage to adding it to the parcel taxes rather than the user rates, because maybe they could defer. I've got to be in the Cove by 3 o'clock, and by the time I get in the car and drive down there, I've got to go now.
Yeah. So I want to separate for a minute. I want to separate the rates from the actual revenue requirement. So if what is causing this discomfort or this angst is the rate and how I've allocated it amongst users, and you don't like that, we can work on that. But as long as you're happy with the revenue requirement, then we can put that, the rate doesn't go in the budget. The revenue requirement goes in the budget. So If it's just that piece of it, that would preclude some support from the Eagle Cliff Committee, then that can be, we have time to work on that. We don't have to pass that bylaw, the rate bylaw, until such time as we're about to send out the bills. We have to get it approved by council before we get the bill set up. So if we just go back to the $14,000 increase year over year, then, or if there's a number that we can land on that, then we could at least get a budget recommendation that I could include in the 5-year financial plan, and we could work out the details later.
So I think Len is on to something, and I like that. Thank you, Len. What happens if we look at the expense side and apply that 10%? Like it's obvious that what we've done is we've forecast an expense, and now we're having to adjust the revenue to equal that. But the forecast expense is just that. It's a forecast. It's not necessarily carved in stone. So what happens if we look at our forecast expense and said, okay, let's apply a 10% number to that? I mean, again, when I look at the budget line items where, again, I know you don't want to do this line by line, but, maintenance and infrastructure, we spent $3,000 in 2021, and we're increasing that to $8,000 next year. And we're continuing on at $8,000+ every year thereafter.
Yeah.
That's a big increase. Can we carve that and make it a little bit more palatable at, say, 10% across that board?
I've got to go, you guys. Sorry.
Okay,
Thank you, Allison.
Take
Sorry
care.
about that.
Take care.
Obviously,
Okay.
a long discussion.
Yeah. That I don't think will work, because those are being funded from that capital reserve, which is being funded from the parcel tax. So what you want to do is reduce your operating revenue collection, which goes against the operating expenses.
No. I'm talking the operating expenses and the flat rate water fees, which are what's equaling each other. The capital side with the parcel tax, et cetera, that's separate. And if we need to increase that one, I don't have any particular heartache with that necessarily. I'm still looking operating expenses, operating revenue.
So Len, I think you suggested a 10% increase, which then would be putting us at a $7,000 revenue increase. And so then I think what you're asking me to do is to go through these operating expenses and shave them back by an equivalent amount. Is that right?
Yes.
Correct.
Everybody buys into it, if you like.
Okay, so that's that $8,000 line item that you're suggesting, because there's not a whole lot that I can do about staffing. There's not a whole lot that I can do about insurance, legal, and audit. So,
but you said that the salary was higher than expected because you had to meet some extraordinary demands due to
yes, in 2021 you'll see the salary expenditure was $46,229, and those did include some one-time costs that were related to implementing the collective agreement. All of the utility workers are now union employees.
Okay, so is it, but that's a one-time fee, or that's an ongoing now?
No, it's those were one-time things, but then when I look at the salary increment based with there's collective agreement provisions for salary increases and stuff, we're looking at a budget that was 37.2 last year is now 42.6.
Okay.
So we could hive some off of that supplies, and I mean, again, it's an estimate. I'm a conservative person. I like to make sure that there's adequate provision for expenses should they come. If you are recommending and you are want us to reduce these planned expenditures in these provisions for expenditures coming out of supplies and services and maintenance, infrastructure and equipment. That's really the only place that we could shave some money off of there by reducing those provisions. They're not expenses that we know we're going to incur. They're allowances for things that might come up. So we can reduce that. And if we end up needing it, then it reduces the amount that gets transferred into your reserve fund.
So yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. So I know you said the insurance, legal and audit service line is untouchable. Why are we seeing 100% increase in that? Or near 100%? From actual to 2021 actuals to 2022.
Our insurance premiums this year are just across the board with all of the impacts on insurance premiums worldwide. We're not immune from that, and we have been hit with some much higher than anticipated costs to our insurance premiums.
I'm just going to jump in real quick as well, because I also have to be at that meeting that Allison's running off to. But from my perspective, we're getting into some detail with the budget, which is always good for sure. But considering the scope of the entirety of the numbers we're looking at, we're really into some splitting of hairs with some of the. I'm prepared. Like, I understand that the annual budget is going up and it's getting expensive. I'm prepared to recommend that this annual budget for operating expenses for the Eagle Cliff system go to council. What I have a problem with is how the capital expenditures are being presented, and that's the only thing that I want to give feedback on. I think that gets really, really scary, and when we're admittedly suggesting that we're just guessing at this, we need to be able to put a caveat out there that people can understand, because I can only, Liam, maybe you can help me on this. Is there going to be a referendum for this borrowing?
There would have to be. Right.
So we need to make sure that people understand what's going on here. And so that would be my suggestion, is I'm willing to recommend that the annual budget be put forward to council. But I think we need to rethink how we're presenting this capital expenses and the borrowing. But we do need to wrap this up. So, I mean, what should we do here, guys?
Yeah.
We can we can put forward a letter supporting these things to council as well, that they can refer, as Allison said, give some we can, suggest that, I don't know, maybe we don't pass our recommendation, but please refer to our letter that we can sit offline and put together so that they can have our thoughts on this. I don't know.
Yeah. So let's survey the committee, just committee less Ian at this point, I guess. So Glenn, you're saying you're prepared to submit this to council as is, but with
operating
with a K on the operating side, but with a caveat on the capital.
The operating budget going forward to be submitted to council, but I'd like to see the way that we're presenting this capital project to the community really needs to be more palatable as much as we can be. It's enormous, but I think that there's just so many uncertainties with it that at least we need to have that somehow communicated to everybody.
Okay. Len,
I'm really, I don't know how to cross the bridge. I just realize it's a lot of money, and we expect to pay that for our water system. But yeah, I mean, I understand. I guess you got to go with people that have prepared it and trust that it was the right numbers. I will find out. So okay. I'm willing to.
Okay, Carla, what do you say? What say you on this? What do you think?
I'm fine with moving forward with a recommendation. I think it just kind of is what it is. Price, okay. Costs are increasing, and we should be prepared for that.
Yeah. Okay. So if Glenn, you want to put that motion forward, if somebody wants to second it?
Can we adjust the motion or the recommendation, Liam? Can we reword the recommendation, or can we just say no and then provide them some supporting documents?
No, you can suggest a revised, it's your committee. You get to decide
Sophie,
what you're recommending or not.
Sophie, can you put up on the screen again, please?
Yeah, just one sec.
And I'm sure you've captured all of this discussion. Sorry.
Action, we take action-based minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, it's a bit easier to read this time.
There you go. Okay, so that Eagle Cliff Local Advisory Committee recommend that council direct staff to include the draft Eagle Cliff. So I think we want to add operating budget.
Well, it's a budget as a whole. I think, Glenn, what you were saying is that recommendation is fine, and then we add and endeavor to communicate about the long-term years 2 to 5 capital expenditures.
Yeah.
What's some good wording for that? Sorry, Sophie. With the caveat, how about like with the caveat that years 2 to 5 are very high level, that years 2 to 5 are, Liam, you're a wordsmith. I'll put you on the spot.
I'm just
our high level estimates. Yeah, that's great. I think just and that's fine for the wording. What I heard is you want it clear that we have so much uncertainty around the whole capital plan at this point, and it all is dependent on the outcome of that grant application. And until we know that, we can't really plan until we know that.
You might say conservative estimates, and then semicolon. More accurate forecasts will be determined with the outcome of the grant application.
Yeah, that's good.
Right.
I also still feel strongly that we need to consider the rates being revised to in regards to the heavier users should be paying a heavier.
Well, like I said, we can do that. We can have another meeting and talk about that. I don't need the rate to do a budget.
Just a quick question on that. So I want to make sure I'm clear. So, you know, the annual revenue requirement is what it is. And so I think we could easily reapportion and allocate that revenue requirement across the different user groups so that it's weighted heavily to the high users. And that's what we're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
With the 8 high users.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's only, and it might not be impactful, but I think it needs to be emphasized, because otherwise, why bother trying to conserve water?
Yeah, that makes a really good, really a lot of sense to me, and we can easily do that. I mean, and to be clear though, I mean, you know, having water delivered to our doors, it's expensive, and it's not going to get any cheaper. And so, you know, where I live on the island, I pay $1,500 a year for water, and we're pretty thrifty with our water. But you know, that's the cost of water.
Yeah, I'm wondering, just in the going back to the word crafting of the motion, I'm wondering if we want conservative in there, because conservative implies that you know, they're not necessarily the high end.
Yeah.
So just, you know, our high level estimates, period, take out, there you go. And more accurate forecasts will be determined upon the outcome of the, I like that. Okay, so in interest of trying to get this moving forward and wrapped up, so that's the motion as it stands. Glenn, are you okay with that?
I can work with, I can live with that.
Yep. I second that.
Len seconds, and voting in favor. I kind of struggle with it, but I'll throw my hand up nonetheless.
Yeah.
And Kristen, I'd like to work with you maybe directly on setting up a rate fee for users on terms of the water flat rate. I'll work within the committee group to maybe put forward a proposal, and then we'll present it to you.
If you guys want to like work on it, we can help with some consumption numbers and stuff. So
perfect. Okay, so that was a somewhat painful process, I must admit.
Are you going to lose quorum if I check out?
Both Patrick and I both have to be at that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
we're all going to the same place.
So why don't we just wrap the meeting up with that period? Because I don't think there's anything really more on the agenda. So I think we're able to close then, right? Next meeting is to be determined. We'll leave that open. There was some information items that doesn't say much. There was another question period by the public put forward. We probably should give an opportunity there real quick. Any additional questions, anybody? Seeing none, I think we're done. Okay, motion for adjournment. Glenn, seconded.
Glenn
approved.
I feel for you guys. You got a lot of these meetings ahead of you this week, I think, don't you?
Yeah. I apologize for the time.
Good luck. Thank you very much.